If you've ever wanted to make a game from scratch with no skills or experience, RPG Maker is the perfect starting point. It's suitable for anyone of any skill level to make games with, and I'd strongly recommend RPG Maker as the perfect introduction to game development at any age. Even though it's one of the easiest and most beginner-friendly engines out there, the task of making an entire game from start to finish is still a large undertaking. It's easy to start making a game when you're still in the enthusiastic phase, where ideas flow more freely and excitedly, but it's just as easy to hit roadblocks where you can't work out what comes next. So in this video, we'll go through all the steps of making a game in RPG Maker, from your first idea to fleshing out the mechanics, to putting the finishing polish on your project. The very start of any project is the inspiration phase. This is where you might be playing other games or consuming other media like TV shows, movies, and books. This isn't necessarily one of the active phases of game development, but it can be really important to acknowledge the roots of your ideas. It's especially useful later in development if you start reaching roadblocks with your game. Taking inspiration from elsewhere is not cheating or copying, as long as you're not directly taking someone else's ideas and that you put a unique spin on what you plan to do with your ideas. Every great creator has taken inspiration from works that came before them, and it's no different with your game. Don't be afraid to acknowledge those sources. It will help you to analyze what you really like about them, what makes them enjoyable, and how you can make your games great too. A popular way to organize your inspiration is through something called a mood board. They're used to summarize something's themes and feelings, usually in one big collaged image. There are many free apps available online that you can use to put together a mood board, so try searching online for one that suits you. You can also use any image editing software to make a simple image with all of your ideas, or you could even make a real-world physical mood board if you find it helps to motivate you by better keeping your ideas on the rails. The next phase of developing your game is planning. This is a dreaded phase for many developers, so it's advisable to find the best medium that helps you to put your ideas down in a way that you can easily reference later. There are some softwares available online that you can buy or download for free that are specifically designed for this phase of development, such as Artisy, which has both a paid and free model. You could also just use any basic spreadsheet software to organize your information. Google Sheets is a great way to collaborate with other creators on your project with a free cloud-based service, so that your whole team can see updates in real time. You could also make physical notes if you prefer to work with pen and paper, but make sure to have a good filing system so that you can easily find important notes later on. It's advisable to plan out and write down everything, even if you think it might not necessarily be that important. That information can be skipped over when you're referencing it, and as nobody's ever going to see it but you and your team, you might as well make notes about anything and everything. You can always clean and refine your notes as you go along. Using computer software for your planning means that you can use Ctrl and F or other search functions to easily find anything later on if you have too many notes to read through. When planning a game, there are a few different types of elements you'll need to consider. The story. This is the main story of your game, as well as the characters, including their physical appearances, their own backstories, their personalities, and what relates them to the main story. The world. Information on your game's world as a whole, not just the specific places the player will visit. This could include the world's history and politics, important events, and important places. With RPG Maker specifically, you may also want to start planning out some maps where noteworthy things happen. These maps don't have to be perfect straight away, they're just a blueprint for what you're eventually going to turn them into. The database. RPG Maker has an expansive database where a lot of the game's data is stored. This is not something you'll need to fill out extensively while you're in the planning phase, but it's advisable to make some notes on the kinds of things you're going to need in the database. You can start planning things like characters, seen as actors in the database, their classes and skills, items, weapons, armors, as well as enemies that will appear in battles. The gameplay loop. This is what's going to make your game fun or give the player a purpose to keep playing. A gameplay loop is exactly how it sounds. It's a loop of information, tasks, and rewards that make up the main idea of the gameplay. As a basic example, maybe there's a strong enemy stopping the player from advancing to the next area, so they need to fight weaker enemies to get stronger until they can pass. They are rewarded with a new area with stronger enemies and better rewards, and the process repeats itself. It's really important to hone in on a well-polished and exciting gameplay loop so that the player will never lose purpose, otherwise they might start to feel lost and eventually stop playing the game. The next step for your player to take should always be fully clear to them. This can be done by teaching them the gameplay loop, having a thorough quest system in the game, or any other way that makes it clear what the next objective is. Development needs. This is a good time to start thinking about what assets and skill sets you're going to need for your game. Take the time here to think about a brief idea of what graphics and audio you're going to need, as well as what style you're going to use for them. You can also think about the gameplay and whether you're going to need help with eventing or plugins. You may need to start figuring out a budget at this point for hired help or purchased assets, or looking for a team who can work with you either as paid staff, free helpers, or another arrangement that works for you. Once you've planned as much of your game as you can, it could be a good idea to build a small prototype. This doesn't need to be anything especially long or sophisticated, but you can use this time to test your gameplay loop and make sure it's enjoyable, try out your graphics and audio, check out the vibes of your game so far, and even get feedback from others on how to change, improve, or polish. You should take as much time as you need to in this phase, perfecting what draws the player into your game. The prototype is an important phase because it should technically prevent any huge changes that might need to be made to the game later if you suddenly realize things were not how you thought they'd be. So it will save you a lot of development time to learn as much from the prototype as you possibly can. If you're happy with your plans and your prototype, it's time to start building the framework of your game. This will look different for every game, but generally you're going to want to start laying all of the groundwork. This could be adding all of the information to your project's database, such as items, classes, skills, etc. Setting up variables and switches, creating your maps and making key events, building and integrating gameplay mechanics. Again, this is a very important part of the development that you shouldn't shy away from putting some hours into. RPG Maker also makes it very easy to playtest your game throughout development, so you should regularly test parts of your project when you add new things. After setting all of your game's framework up, it's time to flesh out the rest of it. This stage of development is very much akin to the old draw the rest of the owl meme. There will be a lot of repetition here, building on what you've already added. Think about things like adding all of your game's dialogue, setting up cutscenes and story events, creating battles and other gameplay. It will look different for everyone's game, but people making typical role-playing games with RPG Maker will find that a lot of their processes will be the same, as the gameplay is very similar. Cutscenes, exploration, battles, shops and inns, etc. Again, it's very important to be testing your project throughout development and making sure each new feature you add is working as intended. After the bulk of the game has been developed and you've finished creating all of the story and gameplay, it's time to start tightening it up with some polish. Play through your game and look thoroughly at areas that could use some work, either graphically or in terms of the gameplay. Your game should be enjoyable or send the message that you want to convey, so make sure it's doing those things. This could also come in the form of cleaning up how your game comes across visually with improvements to the art, or adding more satisfying animations to the project's UI and gameplay. The result of this phase should be a game that you would be happy to release to the public in its current state. Now that you believe the game is ready to release, it's time to thoroughly test the entirety of your project. It is possible to do this on your own, especially if your project is fairly small. However, you can enlist help from other people, such as friends and family, people online, or you could even hire people who test games professionally. Make sure that anybody testing your game knows how to submit a useful bug report or feedback. This can look however you think will work best for you personally, as you'll be the one fixing the bugs and using the feedback, but a good report will show you how to replicate the bug yourself. Consider asking bug testers to provide detailed instructions for how they came across the bug. Ask for a copy of their save file so that you can investigate it for yourself, and ask for screenshots or a video of what happens before, during, and after the bug. If you've asked someone for feedback, you should let them know what would be helpful to you and what they should take into consideration when playing your game. Are you looking for feedback on the visuals, sound quality, the gameplay? Ask them to be brutally honest about what they thought, especially if you're planning to eventually release your game online. When you've fixed any bugs in your project, run through the testing phase again until you're content that your game runs smoothly. Releasing your project isn't something you should only be thinking about when the game is finished. If you're planning to release your game online, or especially if you're looking to earn money from sales, you'll need to consider marketing. This is something that should ideally be happening several months before the game's release. Consider building an early interest in your game on social media using screenshots or videos once your project has enough content. You could also think about a planned release date for your game, though this is usually best to announce to your player base when the game is in late testing so that you can be sure to reach your deadline in time. The most common way to advertise indie games is through social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Most social media sites have a way of tagging your posts with things like hashtags, so that people can find your game more easily. You could also consider paid advertisements on these platforms, though it's not usually necessary to invest if you advertise well enough. When it comes to setting out a release date for your game, you should also think about which platforms you're going to announce that your game will be playable on. For the majority of RPG Maker developers, that will likely be strictly limited to PC platforms unless you're specifically looking to port to a console. As a free platform, itch.io is a great place to upload and sell indie games. It's free to host your games and you can choose how much of a cut the platform takes with each sale, and the mandatory fees taken by the payment processors are otherwise very reasonable. The site itself performs very adequately, with a functional tagging system and front page features to help you reach your game's target audience. The back end of the site also provides in-depth analytics and a way to set up a discount on your project at any time, as well as cool features like earnings goals, co-op bundles with other developers, as well as Patreon and Kickstarter integration. There are also paid platforms such as Steam, which have a larger user base and could potentially provide better in-house advertising with minimal effort. Steam does however charge a Steam Direct fee, and each product costs $100 for the developer to set up. There are also issues with having to wait through review periods, which can take a long time, so you'll need to take that into consideration if you're planning to upload to Steam. Alternatively, if you're looking to advertise your project on a paid platform or port to a console but don't have the funds or experience, you could seek out a publisher for your game. A publisher is likely to cover the fees and handle the majority of the game's release and advertisement, leaving you with the work of just developing the game itself. However, they may charge quite a large fee for doing so, or you may be expected to sign limiting contracts or NDAs, so make sure to do as much research as you can before accepting. If you're able to invest some money into it, you could also seek out specialised legal help to translate any contracts into simpler terms for you, and negotiate the best deal before you accept. Once your project is released, you will hopefully start to receive feedback from your player base on what the game does well, or where it could be improved. This information is useful to keep in mind if you plan to create another game in future, so be sure to thoughtfully listen to anyone who plays your game and provides feedback. You may also want to consider bug fixes, updates, or DLC. It's important to keep these in mind when first programming your game, as you should try to build a code environment that lets you easily update it in the future if needed. And that's the basics of creating and releasing your first game. This process may look different to you or become more refined as you build games, but these steps are a great starting place if you're completely new to structuring your process. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your games!